Hello. Here we are at the lovely estate of Sarah and George Morgan, known as Bedford Hall in Lenox. Behind me, you see the beautiful Tudor-style mansion, 3 stories high, red brick with the lancet windows, all surrounded by brownstone. And this mansion was completed in the year 1893 and was designed by the architectural firm of Roche and Tilden. Now, Bedford Hall has a long and storied history that actually expands earlier than the Gilded Age, because sitting on the very site of the Bedford Hall that we see now was a much more modest home of the Haggerty family. And here, at this very spot, the hero of the Massachusetts 54th spent his honeymoon with the daughter of the Haggertys, Annie Haggerty. And that was probably the last really happy, carefree time for Mr. Shaw, because he went down to fight in battle later on that year, and he died with his men. As told in the story of the movie, in the movie Glory. Now I'm just going to walk around and the estate itself. It's very large. Now, when this house was built, it was one of the first of the big houses that was built here in Lenox during the Gilded Age. And it was known to be a cottage. And all cottages have to follow what they call the 30-30 rule. And that is, they have 30 rooms, at least 30 rooms, and they're on 30 acres of land. The front with the porte cochere, it's typical of these designs that the back of the house incorporates the view with a long veranda. And here we see the veranda in the back, and then the long view over the lawn, and all of those trees which have just popped up that weren't there in the past are blocking the very famous view of Bedford Hall. Now, Sarah Morgan, she was really old money. She didn't make money, she just inherited it. Her brother was J.P. Morgan, the famous financier of the Gilded Age, but her father really began the family fortunes when he started a banking firm in London. And here you can see that Sarah has built herself a very impressive house here that shows so well up on the high hill. You can see the back views. Can you grab those in? Now, the lifestyle that was carried on in these great houses, very much like an English country home. And the style of this house, being a Jacobean revival home, really harkens back to the time of Henry VIII in England, a copy of that. The house was never really meant to look new or modern. It was meant to be old and established. And it certainly pops out that sort of ostentation that was new and just becoming a part of the American landscape. So now you'll see big houses and things like that. And all along, these would have been beautifully landscaped carriage rides. And Sarah certainly maintained beautiful gardens and all of those things that you would expect from a very proper English home. Now, Sarah Morgan had 3 children, and she certainly meant the house to pass on from generation to generation. But that wasn't to be the case, because Sarah Morgan passed away quite young while she was on a trip to Germany. And when the house finally was inherited by her children, already the Gilded Age was beginning to wane, and society had moved away from the maintenance of these very expensive estates, which required so many workers and so much labor and even so much to heat and maintain them. And then the country was falling into its sort of decline before the First World War. And then you just end up with a big, huge mansion that nobody really knew what to do with. Vintford Hall is certainly one of those stories. It eventually fell into complete decay as it was abandoned for 10 years and rain was allowed to come in. Now behind me you see what these grounds are that I'm walking into now were where 6 large, very large greenhouses were, and they were all destroyed. And now you can see that the story of the Gilded Age in Lenox is really about what people can make of it and improve of it, and just see if there's anything left to tell except for the story. I know we're going to follow down on the carriage road a little further on the estate and take a look at the carriage house, which is still standing. Certainly there's no real reason for carriage houses anymore, but in the Gilded Age it was very important that you had a carriage house, because that's what society was about here. Taking out your carriages, buying horses, wearing the proper clothing while you're driving around, and being social. Social with the very important people that live on these estates that surround you. Sarah's neighbors on Kemble Street with Furlinghausen's, the Alexanders. There's Edith Wharton's home down the street, and further on the Patterson estate, which is Blantyre, and on the other side of that street, that's Windhurst, the Sloane family that marries so well into the Vanderbilts and makes friends with the president. So most of the visiting presidents were actually up at Windhurst. So now we're just walking down a carriage road and down to that really impressive carriage house, standing on the ground, just waiting for, what will become of it. It's one of the very few of the large carriage houses that are still standing in Lenox, and it definitely harkens back to another time in Lenox where the lifestyle is just very different from what we are experiencing today. And I just want to grab that film, make sure that you start to see it. Again, in the same style as the house, red brick, and upstairs here at the carriage house, there was the dormitories for the men that worked on the estate. The women that worked on the estate, they lived in the 3rd floor of the mansion itself. You can see it there. We've improved it significantly. The beautiful keyhole facade again that matches the mansion itself. And there it is, the carriage house at Vintford Hall.